Scott Frost is finally back at UCF, but did he finally take the right job?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in the Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. Joining me as he does every single week is my good friend Andrew Gluchov to talk about Big 12 Media Days. Scott Frost set the internet on fire with one quote from Media Days. We're going to talk about that quote. And in the next half of the show, we're going to get to some other comments by UCF's head guy. Let's start at the top. Andrew, before we started recording, you had your feelings about what Scott Frost had to say. I had my feelings about it. We're going to get your feelings about it in the comments after the video. If you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe on the channel. We're on the race to 1,000 subscribers, and we are so close. Let's get into this. Scott Frost at Media Days was asked a question, and this was his response. I said I wouldn't leave UCF unless it was someplace you could win a national championship. I got tugged in a direction to try to help my alma mater and didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. I'm lucky to get back to a place where I was a lot happier. Don't take the wrong job. Don't take the wrong job. Andrew, I'm opening the floor to you, my friend, on this one. You have some strong feelings about this one. Talk to me, man. He's back in Orlando. For all intents and purposes, UCF fans are happy about him being back in Orlando. Why say this?
All right. He said the quiet part way loud. I mean, with a bullhorn and everything. Don't take the wrong job. I mean, well, granted, we knew Nebraska was the wrong job because his style doesn't fit Nebraska. Corn-fed, big guys. He was built for speed. That's what he learned from. He learned from Chip Kelly over in Oregon. That's the style that he brought to UCF. That's the type of athlete you get out of Florida is the speed guy and tempo offense. That's what was built there. That's what works there. It wasn't meant to go to Nebraska. However, that's the wrong way to say it. Not making friends and influencing people. Look, he had two. Maybe he wasn't ready to answer this question. I don't know, but he knew he had to be asked this. I think he answered. He gave the correct answer in the very wrong way. What he should have done is shown a little humility on this, and he did. He made excuses. The truth is, what he should have said was, "We were not a good fit for each other." Sorry, man, you are not without flaw. The fact that you failed miserably at Nebraska is largely on you. You have to take accountability before that. I mean, you go at 22 in one score games. I mean, I'm sorry. That goes on to the coaching staff at that point. You can't roll poorly with the dice every single time like that. So I'm sorry. Some UCF fans like the comment. They liked what he said. However, the internet at large is pretty much against him on it because this is not how you make friends and influence people. You're saying the wrong thing, but you're trying to say. Let me phrase that. You're trying to say the right thing, but you're doing it in the wrong way. And yeah, I know he didn't want to take the job. We all knew he didn't want to take the job, but his dad wanted to see him, coach at Nebraska before he died, which he did during his tenure there. I mean, he was already heading towards, passing on. So, I mean, this was partly that. And then, when his old coach, Tom Osborne, calls, mama called, you gotta answer the call. At the end of the day, it was a bad fit, but he should have showed a little bit of humility. It didn't work out. It wasn't a good fit for either of us. We thought it was. It didn't work out. Instead of saying, don't take the wrong job. Look, I took the wrong job once, and I was desperate to get out of that situation, went to another because it was the first available. It was the wrong job. And yeah, it was an awful year of working. But you know what? When they started, smoothing things over, to try to fix things, my view of it is it wasn't don't take the wrong job. It just wasn't a good fit for us, for them, for me. I'm sorry, I can't support his stance on that because he's taking no accountability for the fact that he failed miserably over there.
Yeah, I will say this. I'm going to throw my guy Scott Frost a lifeline here. When he got hired at UCF, I'll go back to a quote that he said about climbing the ladder of success. Sometimes they forget to tell you to stop when you're happy. And I think this was more of a way of him saying, look, we were happy at UCF and I was chasing success and it was the wrong decision for me at the time in hindsight. So, maybe people don't like that he said that part out loud, Andrew, but, I think it's consistent with what his message was when he got hired. Now, it's media days, so everything you say is going to be hyper scrutinized, and we understand that. But,
understatement.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, the job is the same. You got to go out and you got to win football games. And so, look, man, if they win 9 games, nobody's going to remember what he said at media days about a job that he's no longer at. But I will tell you, in my book, messaging does matter. So I hear you on this. I think that when a coach says things like this, what is he going to say in the media after a tough loss? What is he going to say in the media after, a player fails to perform or, maybe there's a mix up on a call? Accountability was the word that you used. Taking no accountability. If you can do it in one area, you may do it in other areas. I hope this doesn't spill over into other areas of the program, as he continues on as head coach. But like I said, winning solves a lot here. Look, let's get to a quick break here, and then I want to get to some of the Q&A from Media Days. We're going to play some video clips for you guys from Big 12 Media Days on questions that were asked of Scott Frost and his answers. Next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, guys. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, helping you get in the game. Summer sports are in full swing. And whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. Look, new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Just open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Guys, $5 can win you $150 in bonus bets. You got to get on this, FanDuel.com. Andrew, we hope Scott Frost is in the right job now. So hopefully he's in the right job. But he had some comments at Media Days. He was asked about a player that is here with him at Media Days. I want to play this question here and then get your thoughts on what he had to say.
Scott, I wanted to ask, you mentioned Paul. What has he meant to the program? Obviously, you brought him here from Media Days, but from the moment he first arrived on campus to now, what have you seen from him, especially this year coming back then?
Well, I see him right now. He's about as tall sitting down as you are standing up. He's almost like an ambassador for UCF. He came from Germany. He's been there 6 years, right, Paul? 6 years at the university. Great human being, fun to be around every day. Love everything he stands for. I've seen him get even better than what he was last year in my short time at UCF. So excited to watch him continue to blossom, and I'm just lucky to be around him for a year.
It is a great honor to be taken to Media Days. You and I have talked about this. If your coach chooses you to go, he thinks a lot of you. Talk to me about Paul here, man, and Scott Frost's decision to take him to Media Days to represent UCF.
Well, Paul Rubel, personifies a lot of the aspects that Knight Nation has kind of, stood behind. He's a great character of a personality, wise. He big, tall, guy from Germany, but he's you'd think a little more stoic, but I mean he's a clever guy. He's funny, and he doesn't take himself that seriously. But he's got a heart of gold, and I think that's one reason why I don't want to say put on a pedestal because that makes it sound like a negative thing, but he's elevated himself not just physically because he's 6'10", but elevate himself above a lot of his peers because of the person who he is. As far as an ambassador to the program, a guy that you want to, stand behind as far as being a good person, it reminds me a bit of Shaquem Griffin, just a toned down version. Shaquem Griffin was very much a personal person, very, kind-hearted, did a lot of work for the community and the greater good at large. Paul's not far off from that. He's just a much more subdued personality, but you want those kind of guys in your locker room that shows others, not just, playing on the field, but, just growing up as a person. These young freshmen are 18 years old coming in. They're still figuring out who they are and who they want to be. So by having an elder statesman like a Paul Rubel who personifies what's good in the world, you want that kind of guy in your locker room so that others want to emulate. Because as we know, NCAA has kind of hammered it down for us. Most athletes are not going to be professional when they're done with college. So you want people to develop good, skills in humanity, and you take that, into the working world, and even if they become a pro athlete, remember to take care of your community at large, be a gentle person, be kind. Those are things you want to spread. You want that kind of attitude out there. As we know, in the world, it's not a nice place, and we need more, kindness towards our fellow man. So by having a guy like that there, you allow him the chance, not only is the fact that he's been there for 6 years, but you give him a chance to be at media days as one of the focal points of UCF. That's one of the guys that, you're front and center, you're representing the program. I couldn't think of a better guy to represent. We talked about it. When we were guessing, he was one of the two main guys that I expected to be there because of stuff like that, where you're just, aside from that you're going to be a starter, you're just a really good person, and you want that kind of guy front and center.
It is a great honor to be chosen by your coach to go to media days. At the very least, it says something about the leadership and character of that person. You're either going to be the star player or the quarterback, or you're going to be somebody who they expect to be a vocal leader on the team. Paul Rubel going to media days to represent UCF. Scott Frost was also asked about being back at the old job. A comparison was made between him and Rich Rod returning to their old programs. Let's listen to what Scott Frost had to say about being back in Orlando.
You and Rich Rodriguez are both back at old jobs in different circumstances, but what are, from your perspective, things that are different and things that haven't changed so much?
UCF is unique, in my opinion. It's so young compared to most of the other schools in Power 4 leagues. It certainly feels like home to me and feels comfortable, but it has grown since I've been there. It's amazing to see the changes. I think we're just scratching the surface of what UCF can be as a university and athletic department. If we keep working hard to push it, I think UCF can become something even far greater than what it has become today. The support of the people around Orlando and the alumni that we have are certainly pushing us in a good direction. And again, I'm really excited to be able to represent that group again.
We are just scratching the surface of what UCF could be, especially now that they are back in the Big 12. Look, I think that UCF has always been just on the verge of something. Now that they're in the Big 12, they don't have to be on the verge of it anymore, Andrew. If they have a repeat of 2017, they're going to have a shot to win a national title, and that's what it's all about. Now, see, when he made the comments about don't take the wrong job and stop when you're happy and all this is about chasing to a program where you feel like you could win national titles, because that's the ultimate goal for every coach, Andrew, is to win national titles. You are hindered by the conference that you were in if you weren't in a Power 5 conference before. Now we have a 12-team playoff. There's more opportunity. UCF is no longer going to just scratch the surface, man. I think, this comment is about the fact that he feels like this is a place where you can create a legacy.
Yeah, I mean, UCF is the youngest Power 4 school by decades. The closest one after that is Houston, and Houston is 33 years older. They're the only two that are after World War II. UCF started in the 60s. Their football program didn't even start till 1979. Houston's football program started in like the late 40s, 46, 47 range, and then everyone else is way before that. A lot of schools have 100-year plus programs, and UCF's one of the very few that are on the outside looking in on that, and it's not even close. A lot of group of non-power conference schools are way older than UCF. So Scott Frost makes a very valid point. UCF as a school, as a generational thing, is still trying to figure itself out, still growing. It's basically like an adolescent school, compared to these others that are very well established. And because of that, they're still figuring out what their destiny is going to be. It makes the situation with Rich Rodriguez a little bit different, aside from the fact that Rich Rodriguez stayed within college. And while he did struggle at Michigan and that didn't work out, he did work his way back up. Had a great run at Jacksonville State, through last year, and is back at West Virginia. Scott Frost kind of got, exiled out of college football. He's worked his way back in just by chance. UCF gave him an opportunity to come back. So while the circumstances of them coming back are different, there definitely is a bit of intrigue because, I think of Mac Brown on, retreads. And how did that work out? It worked out fair, and then the wheels kind of fell off last year big time. Now we got Bill Belichick coming in, and as it was mentioned during media days, they even talked about Scott Frost played under Bill Belichick when he was defensive coordinator with the New York Jets, and Frost was a defensive back. They're going to now be lined up against each other as far as coaches, September 20th at the Bounce House. And, I think it'll be cool to see Rich Rod and Scott Frost coach against each other at homecoming in Orlando later in the season to see which retread is going to get the leg up. Both programs had to do a lot of retooling. I think West Virginia's got the leg up, but that doesn't mean it's going to be, forever. That may be just a 1-year benefit.
Agreed. Look, that's not all Scott Frost had to say at media days. We'll get to more comments from UCF's head ball coach next on Locked On UCF. Implementing change. Scott Frost was asked, Andrew, about changes that he's implemented with the program since he's arrived on campus. That's what he had to say.
Specifically, what are some of the changes that you were able to implement in this offseason on and off the field as far as maintaining the success for this upcoming season?
We had a lot of work to do when I got to UCF again. I think we had 48 scholarship players on the team when I got there. So it's going to be almost a complete reset. I think we have close to 70 new football players in our program. That being said, almost every one of them is new to me since I just got there. We have a lot of work to do to make sure we get to know each other and take a collection of individuals and turn them into a cohesive unit. And that doesn't just happen. We have to be very intentional about that. I guess the good side of that is we were able to, flip the roster and bring kids in largely that fit us from a scheme standpoint and from a character and culture standpoint. And it's been fun watching that group of guys come together.
Scott Frost making a point about how many players they brought into the program, a staggering amount. I think he said 70 players or something crazy they brought into the program.
Close to that.
Yeah, that is a lot of turnover. That's a rebuild. Andrew, that's a rebuild.
That's a reset.
Definitely will cause you to temper expectations in year one as they figure out how to get this team to play like a team. What do you think about the changes that he's talking about and the challenges that you have in an off season like this, where you have so much turnover, which is starting to become pretty common in college football with all the new transfer rules?
Right. And it's one reason why you have to have tempered expectations compared to his first tenure at UCF, where they went from winless to undefeated in 2 seasons. I think people forget how talented that 2015 squad was. And I this is a hill I will die on. It is the most talented winless squad you will ever find anywhere. There's a number of players who are in the NFL that were on that team and played meaningful time. That was a case of leadership rotting from the top, and it, these players had no direction and no one to lead them, and it just all fell apart. Then Scott Frost comes in, they new captain on board, they right the ship, and those talented guys were able to ball out in 2017, and some of them stayed over, beyond Frost's tenure into 2018, where Josh Heupel led them to another undefeated regular season and conference championship. So, we have to understand that that's not happening again, because that team, that 15 team was way more talented than, some of these holdovers that are coming over. If we had the portal in 2015 to 2016, like we do now, I mean, that would have been a hard reset. And I doubt UCF would have ever sniffed anything close to an undefeated season.
I agree with you.
Yeah. However, the game's changed. So now they've had to hit the hard reset. A lot of players left after Gus Malzahn left. Some very talented new guys come in. It's going to take a while to kind of work things out. One of the things that Frost mentioned was that, he was asked about the quarterbacks. And he said, the quarterbacks aren't bad, just no one's standing out. He's like, someone's going to have to step up and stand out. We haven't figured out who's going to be the guy, and we'd like to figure out who the guy is sooner than later so that we can start giving him more reps and getting them, set up as the starter. But no one's doing enough to show that they want or are capable of the job over everybody else. So I thought that was a very unique thing, that interesting thing that he said during his press conference. A lot of these questions were kind of almost softball questions or repetitive questions, but that one was a comment that he said during the day that I thought was pretty meaty. Reading between the lines, no one's impressing him enough to become the starter, and the competition is too close. Okay, duly noted. But to go back to what you're saying, tempered expectations. He said it from day one when he was hired as, rehired as UCF's coach. Like, don't expect what happened before to happen here. Again, not overnight like that. It's going to take some time. It's a different world. And I just hope fans are willing to give him the shot to try this out, make sure it works. Gus Malzahn had, 4 seasons, and we'll see what Scott Frost has, as far as trying to build a winner.
Well, you got to learn from the past. He was asked about his biggest learnings. So we're going to close the show on a question about what his biggest learnings are in his journey to and from UCF.
Obviously, you've been out of college football for a couple years now. What would you say is the biggest thing you have learned that should help you with your second stint at UCF?
I think all experience, good and bad, gives you wisdom and new perspective. Biggest thing I've learned, probably you can't do anything alone. And the family at UCF, the way they've treated us the first time, the way they're continuing to treat us, my wife and I are so happy there. And we were looking forward to getting back there and planting roots and helping bring our kids up and raise our kids in Orlando. But knowing that you can't do anything yourself, I'm really excited about the group of guys that we brought together on the coaching staff, the people in the building and administration and coaching. And it takes a group and it takes a team, and I'm really excited about the people that I've surrounded myself with.
Very true.
Scott Frost feeling he has surrounded himself with a better team this go around. Now, we did a segment every time they hired a coach, felt very strongly that they made some very, very good decisions. Bringing back McKenzie Milton was a very popular decision to his coaching staff. But talk to me about this go around, talking about surrounding himself with a good team, a better team. Kind of sounds like a no-brainer, but at the end of the day, there are external factors when you are a head ball coach that could make your program sink or swim. Scott Frost looking to swim this next go around?
Well, this was definitely a less blunt answer than about don't take the wrong job. But this was still throwing a little bit of shade at his prior staff. I do want to point out that when he left for Nebraska, he took his entire coaching staff with him. The guys that went undefeated at UCF flopped at Nebraska. So the question is, okay, where was the failure? I really wanted Frost to say somewhere of, I learned, he kind of alluded to, through good and bad, but I mean, he kind of tap danced around it. I wish he kind of said, I learned from, mistakes that were made, earlier. I thought they were they were the right thing. Turned out they weren't. And I'm using that as a way of learning to get better. I was hoping he would say something like that, a little more contrite. This was a little more a PC answer than what he did, before with Chris Vanini. But I'm sorry. I still think he's like trying to avoid being accountable for the failures at Nebraska, which at the end of the day fall on the coach's shoulders. And it was kind of subtle shade at his former group of assistant coaches, which ironically, one of them, Sean Beckton, is back. He's back at UCF. He's one of his assistants. So, I think he needs to maybe re-listen to these comments, look at how the world is responding to him, and maybe think a little bit about, like, did I answer this right? Am I saying the right things?
Yeah.
He's not saying the right things.
No, yeah, he's not.
More
And
humble.
I'll tell you this. I'll close the show on this. You remember this? I'm dating myself here, but you remember a really long time ago, there was like a Miss America or Miss Universe pageant where they asked the candidate, like, if you could have one wish for the world, what would it be? And this girl literally said, I wish everybody could walk around naked and feel as free as I do. And we were like, wait, what? Don't say that.
It could be worse. It could be about math.
Sometimes when you're asked a question on the spot, it sounds good in your head, but then when you watch it in replay, you're like, oh, why did I say that? This biggest learning, I think, might be coming from these press conferences at media days. Messaging matters. Again, what you say will be used against you in recruiting. And so when you say, oh, I feel like I need to surround myself with better people. Okay, but the people you were around, you picked before, if you're the head coach. So, and then you took them with you to another job. So you're absolutely right. Scott Frost, not short on entertainment this Big 12 Media Days, Andrew. Look, this is something we'll continue to cover in the offseason. Ultimately, it comes down to wins and losses. You and I both know. If he wins enough games, nobody's going to remember any of this, but we got to talk about it anyway. Andrew Gluchov, I want to thank you for joining me, as always, for another great edition of Locked On UCF. Guys, thank you for making us your first listen of every day. For your next listen, go check out our friends at The Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest in rumors, portal signings, and all the ongoings in college football. Be the most informed fan ever by watching The Portal Show. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And you can catch us here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.